Well, hi everyone, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the Automotodrome Brno here for round 4 of Ferrari Challenge for 2025. And as you can see, if there was any doubt and curiosity with regards to what the weather would do yesterday, there's no mistaking that it's wet today. Good morning, local time just ahead of 9 a.m. And here is our formal welcome to this Brno circuit, which finds its way through the topography and countryside of the Czech Republic. And it is round 4. We reach kind of the halfway point once we conclude our races here this weekend of our calendar for 2025. From here, we head to 2 weekends in Spain, Valencia and Barcelona. Then it is Spa-Francorchamps and Mugello to round out our 2025 year with the Ferrari Challenge, the revered one-make series here in Europe and indeed around the world. And this Brno circuit is one that most of the drivers embrace and really like because of its roller coaster nature, if you will. It is some 15 turns, and 6 of them are left and 9 of them are right-handers, and it's about 5.4 kilometers and has been recently resurfaced. And I have to say, in challenging conditions yesterday, the drivers put on a darned good show, if I'm honest with you, across all our categories. We have Trofeo Pirelli and Pirelli Am, we have Copa Shell and Copa Shell Am. And the cars we'll see out momentarily on track will be our Shell drivers, who will be qualifying and setting their grid positions for their race to come this afternoon. Alongside me is my earnest colleague, Nico Spalek, who regularly forms part not only of the team for qualifying but also the races as well. Good morning. It is wet.
Good morning. It is wet.
Is it me or is it moist?
It is going to be a very interesting quali session with our Copa Shell drivers in just a few moments, 2 minutes. Here is our race winner, NM. Did a great job yesterday in qualifying, really quick, and made no mistake and was effectively up the road, and we hardly saw him for the majority of the race because he was so far up the road. He is currently 4th in the championship, but he has obviously climbed quite a few steps in the rankings.
It's a good point that you make, and that's one of the reasons that I really embrace the Ferrari Challenge, and that is because the way the points work. 15 for a win, 12 for P2, you know, NM, who is now finding his feet, as it were, has got a chance to catch up in the points because no one ever garners so many points that anybody else can't catch them. Do you know what I mean? It's always close right to the end of the season, and that's obviously what we love. Now, and I remind you that actually qualifying is not pointless.
No, absolutely not. There is exactly 1 point which goes to the pole setter and quickest in the qualifying. There is Thomas Gostner, who the 161 car is the car that he is driving. It had a good race yesterday. Thomas currently 7th in the standing, but from just to illustrate, from 1st, Joyce Grimpias, to 7th, Thomas Gostner is only 15 points, which is exactly what you get for a race win. So after this race, we will have our halftime champion, which gives you exactly nothing, except for the fact that you're leading.
This is Willem van der Vorm, Nico, who returned to racing yesterday, and I thought made a jolly good fist of it, if I'm honest with you, by finishing P4. Well done, Willem, and welcome back to the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Willem, great return.
Scuderia Prague, of course, local team, therefore sporting a number of drivers this weekend, Nico, and actually are situated directly below our opulent commentary studio. It has to be said, when it comes to facilities for broadcasters like ourselves, we are treated very well, oftentimes.
Yeah, definitely are. And there is John Dillon. He is waiting like everybody else for the green light to appear in 7 seconds. Yes, I mean, shout out to the entire production team, obviously also the whole organization of the Corsa Clienti, Ferrari organization, NVP doing the production, and which allows us to bring you this qualifying session and the action from Brno, and well, hopefully not an incident in the pit lane.
I was going to say, Germana, I think it was. No, it wasn't. It was
Zoyce.
It was Zoyce who very nearly got jacked. Come on.
Only got 30 minutes. Come on.
What is jacking? It's house music expression. as Nico tries to find some appropriate or inappropriate song on his iPhone with regards to house music. Front right-hand side, I would indicate that that's where that wet weather tyre is going, and this from the onboard camera. Now, you saw there as Thomas Gerstner was following Soy Scrimpias just how your visibility is really compromised by running close to a car in front of you. So they'll tiptoe their way around, I think, and just see where, if any grip is available to them across this circuit. Von Skeltermar right behind Thomas Gerstner. Yeah, and look at the spray coming off the front, the back. And that's what a lot of people don't consider, that there's as much spray comes off the front as there is the back as well. And of course, it all accumulates behind the car into an utter fog for anyone that's following, like Von Skeltermar.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we have to bear in mind that
that's the most obvious graphic on your screen from race control.
Yeah, it's fairly wet.
Quelle
I think
surprise.
arguably is wet. I mean, nothing has run on this circuit overnight, so any water that has fallen, there's quite a lot of it, has accumulated on the track. Some of that will be dissipated by the cars going through the turns and across the track. As you know, this is feels almost like a race, which it isn't. It's only installation and warm-up for qualifying, but you know, it's already happening. And finally, Thomas Gerstner says, "Well, you know what? If you insist, just go by."
Yeah.
And I'll pick up your spray. So some of that water will be dissipated over the next few minutes, but especially you can see here in the deepest point of the track, that's where inevitably a small lake will have formed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, qualifying strategy will be very interesting, because obviously you need to be very careful and you slowly have to explore the levels of adhesion, the grip levels, but you also have to be mindful that one driver making a mistake, which can easily happen in these conditions, beaching the car in the gravel will bring out a red flag, and whatever your strategy was to that point, you will have to revisit that.
That's why I think, Nico, very nearly all the grid are out there, because I think it is critical to put an early lap in and bank it, just in case. Now, we're right on board with Thomas Gerstner. We split the screen a few moments ago to show you the team principal of the CDP MP Racing organisation, which is Massimo Pepe. And you can see Thomas feathering the steering, Nico. There are some of our drivers that would consider themselves wet weather experts and actually prefer the wet conditions. They perform better, but it's not to every driver's liking. And of course, in terms of setup and strategy, it is always going to be something of a compromise.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's, in some ways, if you're a little bit adventurous, maybe that will play into your hands, because you are willing to risk that little bit more than some other drivers. It may catch you out, but if it doesn't, then you might find a few tenths every lap that others wouldn't be willing to even seek. But it can go right, but it so easily can go wrong. Well, but I think you're right. I mean, just by virtue of the fact that the wet weather tires have a different life cycle compared to the slicks, the drivers will be much more aggressive in terms of using more laps with the wet weather tires, who will definitely work at their ultimate best here in these very wet conditions. So I think we will see drivers doing 11, 12, 13 laps maybe on this set of Pirelli P0 rain tires, who have a displacement that is just it's mind-boggling how much water they can displace when they're running on a really, really wet track.
You say that as if you've got the figures in front of you.
I unfortunately don't.
I mean, it's a ridiculous amount of litres that they can dissipate in the space of a second. It's absolutely extraordinary. So stay on board with Thomas Gerstner. The map is on the right-hand side, the yellow 161 moving at the same time. That is, of course, the GPS tracker of the Thomas Gerstner car. As I say, he feathers the steering. The inputs are not as severe as perhaps they would be in a dry weather situation, as he just tries to control and keep the car in exactly the right place, which is on the tarmac. And it would be so very easy, just a little bit too much on the throttle, or too great a steering input could so easily send the car around. So the order is Manuela Gostner, Fons Skeltermar and Thomas Gostner in terms of times that have been set. There is Massimo Pepe, who is the boss of the Thomas Gostner team, the CDP MP Racing, and this in super replay here as he navigates his way, and navigate seems to be almost the right expression in these marine-like conditions that we have here in the Brno circuit. So Manuela Gostner, Fons Skeltermar, Corinna Gostner has gone third fastest, John Dillon fourth fastest. Here's yesterday's race winner NM, who immediately goes to the top of the chart with a 2:19.682, and that was an installation lap. This is the real deal lap as we run the clock on NM right now. So as I mentioned, he was victorious yesterday, following up his race 2 win at Hockenheim last time around for the Ferrari Challenge. Great sound of the 296 Challenge car then. Under and in acceleration, 3-litre twin-turbo V6, 700 HP. These phenomenal racing cars. And as I said, the Ferrari Challenge here in Brno, part of the European series and season. But the Ferrari Challenge is the most revered one-make series around the world. We race here in Europe, also in the UK, in Japan, in North America, and also in Australasia. We have a real grasp across the world of Ferrari Challenge racing, and it is absolutely loved by competitors and race fans alike. So NM is improving on his previous time, which was a 2:19.682, but as I say, that was set on an installation lap, and he was still quicker than anybody else. So yes, we expect a further improvement from NM, who you can see S1 is colored purple on the graphics bar at the bottom of your screen. That means he's gone quicker than anyone through the first sector of this track. 3 sectors, and the sectors are delineated, if you like. The first sector concludes between turns 3 and 4. Between 8 and 9 for the second sector, and then of course the run all the way to the start-finish line will conclude sector 3, Nico.
Yeah, indeed. And in dry conditions, the first sector takes almost a full minute. The other two combined take roughly the same length.
Yep.
So the first sector clearly the longest one here on this track, and as you can see, more purple showing up on the graphics. And well, we can see a lot of purple. We can't really see NM's car from that shot previously.
It was a better time, but not as marked difference as I thought it was going to be. So just under, where are we at now? 2:18.745 for NM with the fastest time. Compare that to the next quickest, which is Manuela Gostner with a 2:21.301. So 2.5 seconds quicker.
Yeah,
and there is Manuela. Sorry, Nico. Sorry.
There is Manuela Gostner. I think we will see the driver slowly but steadily pushing the limit just a little bit further every time they go around the track. I think at this stage, more water is dissipated from the track than precipitation adds at any given moment, which is not in any way implying that we will have a dry track anytime today, actually.
I can see from one of our feeds actually into our studio here, the John Dillon car is in the pit lane at the moment, having a new set of wet weather tyres going on. Not even someone as talented as John would be prepared to try and go out there on anything other than wet weather tyres. And yeah, a new set of wets going on to the 151 car, which you will see out on track in just a few moments' time. John has set a lap time, and the O that you can see alongside his 9th position at the moment, indicative of him coming out of the pit lane.
Indeed, that means all the cars are now out on the circuit, circling, and Manuela Gostner closes the gap a little bit to the NM time. I think we will see very consistently the drivers pushing just a little bit more every single lap.
And in replay, here is what was happening with the Formula Racing driver, John Dillon, as a new set of wet weather tyres were being placed on the 151 car. Of course, the automatic jacking device in these 296 Challenge cars installed in the car. And there he gets the okay. The car is released off the jacks and ready to go. Here's Willem van der Vorm, who's currently on an installation lap, having come out of the pit lane. He was very impressive yesterday on his return to racing, having banked a P4. The Scuderia Monte Carlo driver, it's great to see him back. The order is, as we speak, NM, Manuela Gosner, Ernst Kirchmeier, Thomas Gosner, Zoe Skrimpias, von Skeltema, Ray Acosta, Corinna Gosner, John Dillon, Willem van der Vorm. That's the order thus far. Nico is absolutely right, where we're going to see marginal gains probably on every single lap. It's going to be very organic growth towards the fastest lap, and assuming the conduct of the track and the driver combo continues for the next 18.5 minutes like this, I think the fastest laps will come towards the end of the session. However, every driver prepared and equally wants to put a banker in case something goes awry, and therefore the session is interrupted.
Yeah, exactly, and that is it's that why we will see the drivers probably stay out for effectively the entirety of the session, trying to improve and make the most of their opportunity over these 30 minutes, where otherwise, you know, some drivers will decide not to come out until maybe the 15-minute mark of the session. None of that strategy applies here this morning, as we see Ray Acosta, who had a very interesting race yesterday. Good qualifying, some back and forth battles, including a penalty that dropped him down the order, and so his result yesterday wasn't indicative of the speed that he showed. So he will try to replicate the speed and improve on his finishing position. P7 for the time being, not bad, but it's still relatively early stages of proceedings here.
Ray Acosta, who races not only here in Europe but also in the North American series to fine effect, is a supremely talented driver. You're absolutely right, and yesterday's result not indicative of the speed that he is able to put onto the track at any given race weekend, whether stateside or here in Europe. So it's NM from Manuela Gosner, Ernst Kirchmeier, Zoe Skrimpias, Thomas Gosner, von Skeltema. Manuela Gosner and von Skeltema both coming into the pit lane, presumably for a new set of wet weather tyres to go on at about the halfway stage of this qualifying session. We've got 16.5 minutes remaining. And also coming in is Ray Acosta, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there's Ernst Kirchmeier, who is traditionally a master in the rain, and we've seen him take race wins even in the snowy conditions at Spielberg some years back. We have no indication of snow here for Brno, but certainly it is very wet. But Ernst Kirchmeier, unfazed by that, super experienced driver, has raced, I want to say, almost in all of the categories and regions that we have in the Ferrari Challenge. As we see the shark-fronted 177 car of von Skeltema. Also showing good pace yesterday, had a little bit of a coming together with Ray Acosta, and that meant that he spun around, had to rejoin, and so also for him the result wasn't really there. Certainly not what he could have achieved otherwise.
We're seeing bigger chunks come out now. John Dillon taking 2.247 seconds out of NM's time. And John is someone that I would consider to be something of a wet weather star, Nico. He knows how to drive and drive quickly in the wet conditions. So John Dillon goes to the top of the chart ahead of NM and Manuela Gosner and Ernst Kirchmeier and Willem van der Vorm momentarily. We saw Ray Acosta coming into the pit lane, and that will be the reason why then. It's a brand spanking new set of wet weather tyres going on to the Ray Acosta car. A bit of an issue there for the engineer and the hub. You can see the pneumatic guns that are used to attach the... It's a one-piece, Nico, you know, where yours and my road-going Ferraris have maybe 5 or 6. Of course, I'm being jestful. But our road cars, you know, which might have 5 or 6 wheel nuts. This wonderful challenge car has a single hub and yeah, just one wheel nut, which is not as elaborate a description for the piece is that's inadequate really. As Scrimpias has a new set of wets going on. And we saw NM.
Yeah, I mean, there is certainly no change in the conditions as such. I mean, it's still very, very wet, and the spray really kicks up. So certainly no indication that the track would evolve to the degree that it would be anything but a very, very wet track. Still, every single lap we see is pretty much a personal improvement, but it's not by leaps and bounds. I think over the last 10 minutes or so, the total best time has improved by 2 seconds or so, and that's the aggregate effect of multiple drivers improving by a tenth or two every single lap. There you can see NM is just off the John Dillon time for the time being. But he will edge closer, and by that trajectory could come out at second or third come the end of this session, seeing that Willem van der Worm, who put it onto P2 for the moment, is about 1.2 seconds off the John Dillon time. So we can see that everybody is steadily improving, and the track affords the drivers the ability to do that.
At the lowest part of the track, and you made the point earlier on, that of course is inevitably, by gravity, where you're going to have the most standing water, presumably. But of course, as the cars are going around lap after lap after lap, the water gets dissipated, doesn't it? And I think it is still raining. It's a job to tell from our once again opulent commentary studio, but I think it is still coming down. And I think in terms of forecast, it's likely to be like this pretty much for the entire day, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. There is, I mean, this is just an indication of the visibility being, if you, obviously the camera condenses that view as, and collects all the spray in the long lens. But yeah, it's supposed to rain pretty much the entirety of the day. It might stop at some point during the time we have the races this afternoon, but we talk about maybe 4 p.m. I wouldn't keep the slicks too much at the at the front of the storage unit. Okay. Let's just leave it at that. As Ernst Kirchmeier finished the lap and is not at the front of the storage unit, but is P2 in the timings.
He's getting closer, isn't he? It's now just 6/10 between John Dillon and Ernst Kirchmeier.
Yeah, and I think we're now 11.5 minutes away from the end of the session. I think it will be very interesting, especially towards the final 5 minutes. It's Willem van der Worm, again leapfrogs Ernst Kirchmeier. I think the drivers, or some of them, at the very end of the quali will throw caution to the wind and say, you know, I will have one more go. And where I was erring on the side of caution, I will err on the side of possibly pole. And I think it will end maybe with someone taking pole, and it might end with someone in the gravel. It's, you know, it's just, you wouldn't be a fool not to try, would you?
No. John Dillon has just improved, and therefore 2:15.769. Manuel Gosler now goes second fastest. The reason for the slight mirth you may hear in my voice was one of our other Ferrari Challenge drivers, Hanno Laskowski, yesterday, and we were sat with him at breakfast this morning, who misjudged a corner, went through the gravel, elevated the car so that it was airborne, then went through the grass, and then got back onto the tarmac and saved it beautifully. And his driver coach, Giacomo Alto, said, that was a purple sector, Dave. He shortcutted the turn, rallycrossed his way through, and it was just a brilliant save. And I said, I'll try not to do that again today, Dave. Great fun, great driver as well, and great camaraderie, and you know, it's nice that we can have some fun from time to time with our esteemed drivers, and esteemed they jolly well are, like Ernst Kirchmeier, who is 7/10 up cumulatively on the 2:15.769 time that has been set. So absolutely playing into your strategic predictions is Ernst Kirkmeyer, who goes from P4 to P1, Nico, by a big, big margin. And there is Giacomo Altoe, the very driver coach I was talking about just momentarily ago, who, of course, is looking after Ernst Kirkmeyer. And that's a big margin, Nico.
Yeah, indeed. Multiple drivers with purple sectors, certainly for the first sector. There is Corinna Gostner. She is currently in a lowly P10, not indicative of where we would expect her. And we switch from one Gostner sister to the other. Manuela Gostner running in P3, also with a projection 2 challenge for the provisional pole time. We're down in the 2:14.7 now, and Manuela Gostner maybe going to be doing something about that. A low 2:14 in the realm of possibility. Not quite. Lost a little bit of time, and you can see it from the sector colors, which perfectly match her car livery.
Yes.
Some light blue, some pink, and some white grayish. But I think she preferred the first 2 color selection. But for the time being, P2, and we stay in the Gostner family and go from Manuela to Thomas.
See him again being very tentative in terms of his steering inputs as he heads towards the timing line now. And he improves a further place, and that was a bit of an installation lap from Thomas Gostner. He's gone up to P5. The big screen that you can see in the middle of the dashboard is there for rear view purposes because there's no interior mirror in these wonderful 296 Challenge cars. The reason for that, there's a massive safety bulkhead across the back of the car, and therefore you can hang a interior mirror, but you'd see nothing through it because of that bulkhead. So that's why you have the big interior screen on the dashboard of the car. And the drivers tell me, Nico, actually, that in their opinion, that interior screen, which operates, of course, with cameras built into the back of the car, actually gives them a more immersive view of what's going on behind them. Sadly, the immersive view in this particular regard is pretty much nothing but water, because of course all the spray is coming up, almost turbulent, isn't it, behind the car? Yeah,
absolutely. And
did I explain that well? I don't think so.
I think so. I think we got the picture. I mean, not that Thomas does, but we got the picture of what the picture does. Thomas Gostner, what we do see and really appreciate is the front view from the car, because we follow him pretty much around the lap, and we can see how wet it is. Obviously, track limits was an issue yesterday. Not so today, because the drivers will be very wise not to touch the painted lines around the track. So they have it in their own best interest to keep it on the grey stuff, which makes life a lot easier for Claudio Garavini and his team in race control.
A very good point you make, because the painted lines, the curbs, and the grass beyond would be perilous right now. I mean, the grass and the earth, it's like a sponge, isn't it? It's accepting all the water that's been thrown down. And yes, the moment a driver puts a wheel outside of the track limits, I would say it's going to be strife for them. And that's why, you're quite right, Claudio Garavini is not going to have too much of a problem with regards to track limits today. So Thomas Gostner crosses the timing line and improves another couple of places and goes up to P5, Nico. So drivers improving. What have we got left? Around about 5 3/4 minutes of the qualifying session for our Copa Shell drivers, as Thomas Gostner then, and as you say, father to Corinna and Manuela, has improved. Look at the water being chucked out from underneath the wheel arches of the 296 Challenge car.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we're in that last 5 minutes of the session where we felt like more adventurous approaches could be taken. Willem van der Worm not quite in that rhythm, I think, although his first sector...
that's Thomas Gostner, Nico, who I fear, if he can't get it out of the gravel there, and there is his team boss Massimo Pepe looking on from CDP MP Racing, yellow flag at turn 4. Now, there is Thomas, and I suspect that car is beached, and I doubt they're going to be able to get that car out of there under its own steam. Therefore, I really rather think that will curtail this session, Nico.
Yeah, I think red flag, and there it is. The red flag has come out.
And it was just a little snap.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, not too big an impact, but...
Forgive me, let's see it from on board. So gently on the steering inputs, just a bit too quicker on the throttle, I guess. Yep. That was it. I mean, and that's how on the knife edge you are. Just takes a brilliant selection of replays that we can see. I mean, actually quite an innocuous shunt.
Yeah,
but with 4.5 minutes left on the session, Nico, surely in these well, I never did. They managed to get the car out, but there'll be some damage to the front of the car, and I suspect they will want to look at the integrity of the barriers as well.
I don't think that was too... I mean, the speeds anyway in these conditions are not as high, and certainly he already spun, and I mean, he's distributing quite a little bit of gravel on the track. Not that it needs any more compromising of grip levels.
Yes, you can actually hear that being released.
Yeah, please don't do that in the braking zone. Anyway, I'm not sure. I think the barriers at that speed should be fairly all right. And in terms of the time, I think 4 minutes 40 is just enough for the session to make sense to get going again. The one thing
I'm in disagreement with you.
I would argue is the longer the session is stopped and the rain accumulates again, the less chances the drivers will have.
The session will restart, Nico, in 3 minutes' time. So what do I know? I just think
a lot.
I just think that, yeah, and it's a really difficult decision to call. But I think with 4.5 minutes, you're gonna get a very, very determined installation lap. You're gonna get maybe 2, and you're gonna get every driver trying to do it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for sure. I think you just have enough time, and you may see some drivers who will say, okay, no, I'm not gonna try be in the pack. I will say I will use one chance.
Yeah.
I'll give you 30 seconds of a head start, then I will go out, I will prepare the car.
Yeah.
With all the time in the world, and I will have one more attempt.
Okay, just while we await the restart of this session, here are some of the highlights that we can bring you from the session so far. Stand by and hold on to your hats. We are merely 5 seconds away from the session resuming. And you'll see the clock at the top of your screen on the left-hand side go to green. And here we go. Let's go back to qualifying. 4.5 minutes. My best guess is, Nico, 1 installation lap. Potentially 2 on the clock.
Yeah. So the fastest lap we saw at quali speed were 2:14, so That means if you double that, it would be 4:30. Now, obviously, you can finish any lap. You can finish any lap that you started with any time on the clock. So
Yes.
effectively, you now still have 4 minutes to start your lap that you want to count. So
Yeah.
I think we now see that effectively all the drivers, with the exception of Ernst Kirchmeier, interestingly, who, however, we can just see beneath our commentary window, who's adopting a little bit of a different approach. He will let everybody get up the road and
Yep.
then be on his own later on. Everybody else having to find visibility, track space. So we expect the drivers to install, have one out lap, and then either go for it directly and have 2 opportunities, or say, well, you know, I rather want to prepare for 2 laps and then have one perfectly prepared attempt. I mean, the peril, as always, one driver making a mistake off the track into the gravel, that would be game over for everybody's chances. So you kind of want to push it, but equally you hope that everybody else behaves and doesn't push too much. But you can only control what you can control.
Absolutely, and we could see that the whole reason for the stoppage was Thomas Gosner. And in fairness to Thomas, we were on board with him, Nico, and his steering inputs and his accelerator inputs were smooth and considered, and it is literally just, you know, you are absolutely on a knife edge, and it was just a little bit too much on the loud pedal, which was what sent the back end of the car around and into the gravel trap, and then the barriers. So, you know, that's how really on the edge every driver is in this qualifying session. I mean, credit to them for their driving prowess, being able to control what is an exceptional racing car in very difficult conditions.
For sure.
Talking of difficult conditions, our broadcast manager comes and joins us, Andrea Montali. Thank you.
So, out laps completed for the most part. So this is with 2 minutes and change.
John Dillon's
remaining.
out. John Dillon has found the gravel, Nico. I thought I heard some Pirellis protesting. And John Dillon, who's 3rd fastest, has found the gravel. And there's a localized yellow for the moment, but that's at the end of the start-finish straight.
So that means, and we've got a red flag, and that's the end of the session. I was wondering if maybe race control would allow those who had already passed the point to at least record that lap, but no such doing, and
Session will not restart.
no surprise there, obviously. And that was always part of the equation. It was always one driver a little bit too ambitious, which, as you already so elegantly explained, it's part of it. You can't push for a pole lap here with 0 risk. It's just impossible. And especially after some water had accumulated in the stoppage, you know, it's just part of it. And Giacomo Altori.
Well, of course, he's pleased because his driver's P1, Nico.
Yep, that's definitely true. Ernst Kirchmeier on pole for the race for tomorrow. Von Skeltemer.
It'll be for today.
For the race later today. Von Skeltemer in P6. Manuela Gostner will line alongside Ernst Kirchmeier. Now John Dillon, fortune and misfortune in the fact that nobody was able to improve, including himself. P3 is a decent start, but equally not. He would have liked to be on the front row.
And undoubtedly had the ability to do so. But again, we go back to this, you know, you are just, you know, it's so close, isn't it, between hero or zero, I'm afraid.
Grande. NM, our race winner yesterday, will have to work from P4, and we know overtaking is difficult on this circuit in the best of conditions, and with the spray and everything, it becomes an extra big challenge. Manuela Agosta, front row.
Yeah.
She will try to possibly go on the outside at the outset, but you know, it's very difficult to predict how the conditions will be for the race start. It might even be a safety car start.
Yes.
So stay tuned and definitely watch the race later today. It's certainly going to be interesting.
You can see discussions going on down there in the pit lane, and there is our pole sitter Ernst Kirchmeier with his driver coach to the left of your picture, Giacomo Altoe, last year's Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli champion. This is the car then that the Kessel Racing driver Ernst Kirchmeier has propelled to P1 on the grid. in due course, we will, of course, bring you the confirmed classification for that Ferrari Challenge qualifying session for our Copa Shell drivers. But it will be Ernst Kirkmeyer from Manuel Agostner, John Dillon, NM across the first two rows of our grid. And there you can see the cars parked up in Parc Ferme effectively. Of course, the one that isn't there is our driver going from P3, John Dillon, whose car was parked up in the gravel, regrettably. Here is qualifying classification, then Ernst Kirkmeyer from Manuel Agostner, John Dillon. Then it's NM, Thomas Gostner, von Skeltermar, Willem van der Vorm, and Zeus Grimpias. They are the top 8. And the session concluded with Ray Acosta, Corinna Gostner, and Ruslan Sadriv. That's it. We'll be back with more qualifying to come during the course of the morning. Bye-bye for now. Hello everybody, top of the morning to you. We're live from the Automotodrome Brno in the Czech Republic for qualifying for our Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli and Trofeo Pirelli AM drivers to set the grid for the second race of the weekend to come this afternoon. As you may have been able to ascertain, the conditions are positively marine-like. We've had rain, we have rain, and the track is to any description, wet. And my colleague alongside me, who has been long-serving and long-suffering alongside me, is looking at the weather radar as we speak, and I rather suspect that here in this particular part of the Czech Republic, which is about 2.5 hours from Prague, the situation is that as we greet round 4 of the Ferrari Challenge Europe for 2025, that the weather is set rainy for pretty much a lot of the day.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. It is a wet track. I mean, we expect weather to be different in Valencia, Barcelona, and you just saw the calendar on screen, but this is the situation. There is gravel to the right, there is grass to the left, and there is a river in the middle, and it's called the racetrack.
And this is the 5.4 kilometer Brno circuit then, which is undulating, which means the low parts of the circuit will attract river-like tendencies. 5.4 kilometers, 15 turns, 6 left, 9 right-handers. Drivers love this circuit, to be fair, because of its topographical nature. 17 degrees the track temperature, the air temperature is 14 degrees, and yeah, we've got the raindrops falling down, and that means it's wet for everybody. I say everybody because we've got 2 categories qualifying at the same time. Our Pirelli drivers and our Pirelli AM drivers. Now, easily identifiable for you. The Pirelli cars have a red strip across the top of the windscreen, and the AM cars have a white strip across the top of the windscreen, and also those colours are replicated on the graphics, as you can see. Yasin Ferrati, Max Mugelli, Pirelli drivers. Then it's Andrew Morrow, Herbert Geiss, David Akabadze, Felix Herziger, Michael Verhagen, James Owen, Nobuhiro Imada, David Gosner, Omri Assid, Marco Zanassi, Gilles Remans, Martin Havas, Hanno Laskowski, Vincenzo Scarpetta, and Hendrik Viol. Those are the 17 drivers that will be out there on track doing their qualifying as a sturdy and steadfast member of the Ferrari Supporters Club. Cut something of a lonely figure there on his own in that grandstand with his flag, but respect to you, sir, for your passion and enthusiasm as we ride on board with Michael Verhagen, trying to navigate his way around this damp circuit.
Yeah, definitely. In fairness, there are quite a few more fans already in the grandstands.
They picked him out, though.
Well, he was the only one who's sitting in the grandstand which doesn't have a roof. So fair play to you, sir, for weathering the elements.
Weathering the weather.
Fair play to everybody else who found the roofed part of the grandstands. And fair play to our competitors here in Trofeo Pirelli and Trofeo Pirelli AM, who are weathering the elements inside their cockpit. So they're not necessarily getting wet, but it is treacherous out there, especially after we had 25 minutes of no cars running across the track. So the rain will have accumulated again, standing water, especially here in this part of the track, which is the lowest segments of the track, and you can probably appreciate it here.
The visibility that Michael Verhagen has is significantly reduced. The wipers do a great job, of course, but the spray that's coming off the car of, I think that's the car of Marco Zanassi that's ahead of him, just means that you're driving into what is effectively fog, Nico.
Absolutely, and you know, arguably, the likes of Hendrik Viol, who will have the best and most extensive track knowledge, maybe benefit a little bit more because they know the track inside out, and visibility not necessarily as big a factor for them, but it is really, really tough. Now, we hope that some of the water will be dissipated by the cars running across the track, but it's never going to be anything like dry or anything in that vicinity. We saw it in the previous qualifying session that the times progressively got quicker until the very end, when the drivers had considered a banker had been set, and now they were trying to get a little bit more adventurous.
Yes.
Immediately, qualifying led to cars being beached in the gravel and red flags coming out. So it is of paramount importance to be really at the sharp end of the qualifying with maybe 7 minutes to go, when you consider that maybe the strategy will change and the focus will be on attacking rather than banking laps. Well, what do we know? We will find out. We're 26.5 minutes away from the end of the session. No times have been set, but that will change in a heartbeat. Yes, sir.
Right. So we're with Michael Verhagen then, and his pit wall. So 18 cars out on track, which also means that even though it's 5.4 kilometers long, as sure as somebody made little apples, you're going to come up against traffic as well, which is going to compromise your visibility and going to compromise perhaps the opportunity for you to set the perfect lap.
Ooh, that was a very much sideways moment from Michael Verhagen here down the hill in this the end of the first sector.
He held it though.
Second sector. Yeah, he held it nicely, but fortunate that there was still some tarmac between himself and the gravel bed, and just shows you how treacherous the conditions are, and that the drivers, each of them, really have to familiarize themselves with the conditions and the grip levels,
which change lap by lap, presumably.
For sure, and that is really where, and we saw this in Copper Shell qualifying earlier, changes in terms of times will be slow and incremental, simply because the drivers will just feel their way around the track and just probably pick a corner or two where they will push a little bit more, where they felt the previous time around, well, maybe I could have been a little bit more aggressive. It is really, really important to not to overdo it. Felix Hirsiger, the first driver to set a meaningful time, or the first quickest time, as we take another look at Michael Verhagen, as he's wiggling and finding his footing in these very tricky conditions.
Here is the number 44 car of Nobuhiro Imada, if my memory serves me, who is currently the, I was going to say he's the fastest of our AM drivers. Well, he isn't anymore, because Herbert Geis, who literally lives virtually next door to my on-air colleague here in a part of Germany, and therefore will be used to these conditions. I just thought I'd get that dig in, because everyone has a go about the British weather, don't they? It's not very nice.
I wonder why.
But anyway, Herbert Geis has gone quickest for our AM drivers, as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen. As we go into the garage of the Formula Racing driver Nobuhiro Imada, Nico, who set a personal a setter faster than anyone through Sector 1. Nobuhiro Imada then looking very, very lively here. He's now third fastest, because Hanno Laskowski has just gone better than him. I say third fastest, I am talking within class. The white graphics on the left-hand side of the screen indicating their AM drivers. Red graphics would indicate their Pirelli driver, of which Gilles Redmond's 2:16.396 has taken 1/100th out of the previous time from Felix Herziger.
Yeah, Gilles Redmond was pole setter in Pirelli yesterday. Not that it brought him a lot of luck in the race. Fairly forgettable race session yesterday for him, but you can't be jinxed by that. You have to do your best in quali and the race, and he will certainly go about that. Nobuhiro Imada, you can see, navigating the last few turns of this circuit, and now going out onto the start-finish straight. So P3 in class for the time being. In the early stages of the session, turns into P2 with less than a tenth of the Herbert Geis time. Marco Zanazzi immediately slotting in between the two of them. And there you can see how difficult it is and how the water comes off the track onto the Ferrari P0 rain tires and then dissipated from there across the livery and bodywork of the car and into the mist that follows each of our cars here on the track. There is Herbert Geis, who's currently in P2 in class, as David Gosner, our pole setter and race winner yesterday, has vaulted everybody and is in P1. But can Herbert Geis follow suit? And indeed he does. He vaults everybody and is P1. We're at a 2:15.546 for the moment, which is quite a respectable time in these torrential conditions. As a replay, there is Felix Hirziger coming very close to Yasin Ferrati and actually finding the gravel there. Not how he drew it up. There is Vincenzo Scarpetta, and big sideways moment and even more of an excursion into the gravel. It just shows you how difficult these conditions are, even for our best drivers. It is such a difficult terrain to race and qualify on.
This is the driver, Nico, that you felt perhaps would have a little bit of an advantage over some others in that he drives for Scuderia Prague. It is Hendrik Viol, who had a brilliant battle in the race yesterday with Marco Sanassi, I have to say. They're arch enemies, if you like, in terms of the championship chase, but they're very, very good friends, and the camaraderie is fantastic. But, of course, when the crash helmet goes on, you want to do the best that you possibly can, and Hendrik Viol, personal best through Sector 1 and Sector 2. This will be kind of the first meaningful time from Hendrik Viol, and it's lowlier than I thought it would be, if I'm honest with you. And inside the garage, I think that's Claudia, his wife, looking on.
Yeah, I think for Hendrik Viol, this is the first one. He's really trying to customize himself with the conditions, and therefore better safe than sorry, especially in these conditions. We still got 20 minutes remaining, and these wet weather tires from Pirelli work so well in these very wet conditions. They're struggling when it's half wet, half dry. That's not what they're designed to do. But the drivers therefore can really maximize the time and put fast lap after fast lap onto the track. Felix Hirziger coming in on a streak of 5 wins, which is almost a historical achievement in the Ferrari Challenge.
Yes,
certainly not something that we see every year. And Felix Hirziger indeed moves up the order. 2:14.158 means that he's reigned supreme for the time being.
Indeed so. Felix Hirziger, P1. Gilles Renmans, P2. Now for our AM drivers, it's Herbert Geis and David Gosner, P1 and P2 within class, P3 and P4 overall. Here's Marco Zanassi, P5 in class. And Marco Zanassi then, I mean, we've still got plenty of time in this qualifying session. Some 20 minutes as near as makes no difference. So a lot still to be done. The only driver that's not made it out on track yet, to my knowledge, Nico, I think he has been out on track, is Henri Acide, who had some issues in the race yesterday. He'll be hoping to right the wrongs of yesterday today. He hasn't put a meaningful time in yet. Marco Zanassi then, that we are following right now, who will be hoping to improve on his P5 position. Nobuhiro Imada currently P6 in class with David Akabadze and Andrew Morrow, P7 and 8. Andrew Morrow making his way out now, having been in presumably for a new set of wet weather tyres.
As we follow Marco Zanassi, who's not on a quick lap by any stretch of the imagination, we see that the drivers are slowly but incrementally improving across our timing screen across the board. So most drivers who finish a lap will find themselves quicker than previously. Marco Zanassi being an exception here due to traffic and conditions. Not moving up from P6, and you could see 7 seconds off the pace. That wasn't a flying lap anyway. Looks menacing in that shot. It's actually a very friendly
yes,
man.
Yes. And has a huge presence in the paddock, it has to be said.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Marco Zanassi then, super slow-mo in replay, and here is the Marco Zanassi, or there was the Marco Zanassi team that we could look at, Pinetti Motorsport. Let's ride on board with Henri Acide. I was saying yesterday he had a torrid time of it in the race, Nico, where he was in and out of the pit lane with seemingly some intermittent problem. And I said that he'll be righting the wrongs of yesterday. And Henri Acide, a Trofeo Pirelli driver, and in conversation with Henri on Friday, he was saying quite rightly that because he's been vaulted 2 categories following his championship success in Shell. First of all, went up to Trofeo Pirelli Am, and then up to Trofeo Pirelli. And he's saying that, you know, I can be racing against people the same age as grandchildren.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Henri is certainly a very talented driver, and his Sector 1 is a personal best, which is no surprise, to be fair. But as we speak, he is on his way to set the best time that he possibly can. We've got 16.5 minutes remaining in this qualifying session for Pirelli and Pirelli Am drivers. Only one driver in the 214s. Make that 2 right now, as Hendrik Viol, Nico, with his local knowledge, has become the fastest of the Pirelli Am drivers, and goes with a time that's only 2/10 down on Felix Herziger. And Henri Acide puts in his first reasonable timed lap and goes P3 in Pirelli. So Henri Acide doing a good job as well in the number 67 car.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Henri Acide has plenty of experience and driving in all sorts of conditions, so he's not faced by the conditions at all. And here is the man, the local hero, who you just extolled the virtues of. As you can see on the left-hand side, the Am standings are being headed by Hendrik Viol, local star. And yeah, he didn't have a great qualifying by his own standards. Remember, Hendrik Viol finished 2nd in the championship last year, just off the points from Klaus de Brunson, and they had a magnificent battle throughout the entirety of the year. Hendrik Viol, the Mr. Consistent, and didn't have a great qualifying, had a good race, quite uneventful in the beginning, but it heated up towards the very end where he pressured Marco Zanassi. But fair play to both of them, great driving, respectful driving. Marco held on for P2, but Hendrik Viol finished the race on the podium, which was cheered accordingly by the people in the grandstands. Lots of fans, obviously, for him, and they would cheer even more for a P1 in qualifying.
That's very fair. Hendrik, of course, naturally driving for the Scuderia Prague team, who I have to say are, like all the teams in the paddock, extraordinarily welcoming and hospitable. And I have to say, if I'd accepted every invitation for a glass of lemonade that I've had from Scuderia Prague, I would be in a state of perpetual lemonade fullness. Hendrik Viol. Make of that what you will. I think you probably understand. Hendrik Viol then is P1 in class. Felix Herziger, P1 in class for the Pirelli drivers. But Hendrik Viol, who doesn't improve on this occasion, he was about 4/10 down on his previous best time. Herbert Guys, though. Good quality from Herbert. And here you can see Felix Herziger with a new set of wet weather tyres going on, Nico. So Felix Herziger, although he is 2:14.158, he clearly feels that perhaps there's a little bit more in there, and the track evolved will play to his advantage, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. The team putting on the new set of wheels. As, let's look who is potentially out of position for the moment in the Pirelli class. We put the standings on the left-hand side. Gilles Remen is 2nd, Henri Acide, Yacine Ferrati, Vincenzo Scarpetta, finished on the podium yesterday, finds himself in P5. As well as Max Mugelli, and I would argue that especially Max Mugelli hasn't really set a competitive time yet. Not by his standards anyway, 2.5 seconds off the pace. Even in these conditions, certainly not indicative of what Max Mugelli can do and has shown time and time again. But we go on board and appreciate once again visibility and grip levels here on this circuit. Today it's really, really difficult. We're on board with James Owen. Where's he from?
Welsh Wales, you know, Boyle.
Okay.
He'll slap me for that. James
One day.
Owen. Really nice guy. Really nice guy. And is at the moment, where's James Owen, 8th fastest, looking for an improvement. He's being coached this weekend by Bobby Thompson, as Hendrik Viol is improving still further. You can see the graphics on the right-hand side of your screen. 2 sectors, Nico, that Hendrik Viol has now put in quicker than anyone. This could trouble the Felix Herziger time. So Hendrik Viol then, a Pirelli Am driver, could go to the very top of the overall chart here. So he rounds the final turn and heads for the timing beam, which he will be trying to break ahead of 2:14.158, and he does it by a 1.390 margin, make that 1.174 now the gap, 2:12.984, Hendrik Viol. That's an impressive lap from him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're now in this stage where times might come down quite significantly, but equally one driver making a mistake and landing in the gravel, as we saw in Coppershell, can put a spanner in the works for everybody. So it's every lap that you can finish and improve is extra crucial in this late stage of the race. We saw Felix Herziger in the pit lane. He has come out again and is going to start a flying lap fairly soon. There is James Owen, good first sector. Second sector not quite as high up the order, but P8 turns into P5, so an improvement from James Owen. And that puts him into P5 in class, which is P9 overall, but still puts 2 Pirelli drivers, Vincenzo Scarpetta and Max Mugelli, provisionally behind him. Is right behind this driver, Yasin Ferrati, in the #1 car from ML Ferrari Racing.
Which is qualifying, Nico. He's 4th in class, but he's 8th overall, so he'll be hoping that a new set of wet weather tyres is enough to propel him further up the order. For our AM drivers that you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, it's Hendrik Viol from David Gosler, Michael Verhagen, Herbert Geis, James Owen, Andrew Morrow, Nobuhiro Umada, David Akabadze, Marco Zanassi, well out of sequence, I would have suggested. Then it's Armin Arifpour, Hanno Laskovski ahead of Armin Arifpour, then Martin Havas. For our Trofeo Pirelli drivers, it's Felix Herziger, Omri Assid, Gilles Renmans, Jason Ferrati, Vincenzo Scarpetta and Max Mugelli, with just under 10 minutes remaining. Well, Gilles Renmans goes quickest of our Pirelli drivers, but it's 2 AM drivers that are at the top of the charts overall. It is Hendrik Viol and David Gosler. Brilliant driving from both of them, brilliant qualifying times from both of them, but Hendrik Viol remains by a margin of half a second the quickest driver overall, and the only driver in the 2-minute 12s. Henri Assid, 3rd fastest, got his mojo back from a disappointing day yesterday, and ever cautious, Nico, we are that it just takes a small aggression on steering input or accelerator that could send a driver potentially pirouetting into the gravel. So the drivers that have banked laps are wise to so do, I would suggest, as David Gosler is 2nd fastest overall. It's not all the time, and it's in challenging conditions like this, Nico, as David Gosler goes within 9/100ths of the Hendrik Viol time.
Yeah, indeed.
I was going to say, it's conditions like this, Nico, where sometimes you see the AM drivers really mixing it with the Pirelli drivers in terms of qualifying times.
Yeah, absolutely. Meanwhile, Felix Herziger, first sector, more than a second quicker than the Hendrik Viol time, who, however, also is improving. I think Felix Herziger and the Reparto Corse Ram team, who have been so successful throughout last year and the season thus far, but especially this weekend, they have been uber competitive and uber quick with pretty much all the drivers that they engineer.
Yeah.
They really have the setup down for this Brno circuit, and as you can see, 1.7 seconds quicker than anybody in Pirelli. That is 1.2 seconds quicker than anybody overall, because remember, for the time being, for the next 7 seconds or so, we have two M drivers quicker than any Pirelli driver, but that will change exactly now as Felix Hirziger vaults to the top. Timed that pretty okay also.
That timed perfectly. 1.1 seconds to the good, very nearly 1.12, but actually make that now merely 9/10 because Hendrik Viol responds by going quicker, as you indicated he was so doing. So it's Felix Hirziger from Hendrik Viol and David Gostner. The order you can see on the left-hand side of your screen.
That is not Daniel Lefebvre, sorry to say. That is Felix Hirziger, our provisional pole setter. Shout out to James Owen, who quietly was P3, but it's just been bested by Andrew Morrow, who has taken that P3 class away, P6 overall. Good lap from this driver in this car, actually, Andrew Morrow.
Yes, Andrew Morrow then, who found success in the Ferrari Challenge in the UK and was Trofeo Pirelli champion. Charles Hurst driver, supported by PRM and RPM, and any other iteration of those letters that you can put onto the car.
REM?
Not REM, no. So yeah, Andrew Morrow, very, very likable and talented young driver who, until coming into the Ferrari Challenge, had driven zero in terms of competitive race cars, you know, and really found his feet in the Ferrari Challenge. And as I say, was Trofeo Pirelli champion in the UK, preferring to race in Europe now, up against really, really stiff competition. And yeah, doing a good job. Michael Verhagen now having gone fastest for our AM drivers with a time of 2:12.041. So within 2.5 tenths of the time of Felix Hirziger. Yeah. So we continue to watch the Charles Hurst driver, Andrew Morrow, then, whose first sector, Nico, was not one to perhaps be writing home about.
No, that's fair, I guess, but these conditions, it's still difficult.
Oh, very.
And we're now 5.5 minutes remaining, so this is really where we expect the drivers who have put a banker in to maybe be a little bit more adventurous and aggressive, and we saw earlier how that can end very, very quickly. Felix Hirziger again improving with a 2:11.425, stretching his lead. Second is Gilles Renment, Henri Acid third in Pirelli, but overall, Michael Verhagen, Hendrik Viol and David Gostner are in 2, 4, 3 and 4, and this is where they would line up for the race. So
absolutely,
we would have 3 AM drivers on the front 2 rows.
Yeah, very impressive indeed. And Michael Verhagen driving for Ferrari Warsaw, Hendrik Viol driving for Scuderia Prague, and David Gostner for CDP MP Racing, as Andrew Morrow then remains P4 in class. Into the garages we go right now. And here is Hendrik Viol driving the number 92 car, one of the very, very bold liveried 296 Challenge cars. Of that there is no doubt. So first sector he's making his way through now, and here's Yassin Ferrati. A number of drivers, in my opinion, are out of position for qualifying, including Yassin Ferrati, Herbert Guys, maybe Nobuhiro Imada, and certainly Marco Zanassi. I would think those are drivers that will be targeting improvements over the remaining 4 minutes, but we are beginning to run out of time, Nico.
Yeah, definitely. Less than 4 minutes, plus whatever lap you are on, you can still finish, obviously, but it's not a lot of time remaining, and where previously it was a wave of personal bests, at least on our timing screen, that has subsided a little bit, so the big improvements are not coming for the moment. Let's see what Yassin Ferrati can do. P4 overall, and that becomes P2 in class as well as overall. The second driver in the 211s.
I didn't see that coming, if I'm honest with you. The sector times were not indicative.
Yeah, no, not particularly, but as we said so many times before, it doesn't have to be purple all the time or even a personal best all the time. He put it together nicely, and that was good enough for a front row position for the moment. Hendrik Viol, second in class, fourth overall.
Hendrik Viol then with a very quick sector 2. 3.5 tenths down, so we'll go again. But traffic is beginning to perhaps play a part as well, Nico, where you've got other cars out there. It's not necessarily that they're in any way impeding your progress, but it is hampering and denying your visibility because of the spray that's coming off from the car ahead of you. So Felix Herziger, Yasin Ferrati, top two in Trofeo Pirelli and Pirelli Am. It's Michael Verhagen and Hendrik Viol, the very car that we are watching right now. I think he's got Felix Herziger ahead of him. Now, as I say, the back end of the car stepping out a little bit there, nicely controlled. Let's go on board with Henri Acide, I think it is. Sure enough, the Kessel driver, who's also targeting an improvement. He's P4 in class at the moment, but that's P7 overall. And as he crosses the timing line, he's going to start his fast lap now with just under 2 minutes remaining.
That means it's going to be his last attempt at an improvement. Let's see, is anybody really pushing an improvement? Improving. The first sector is so long that effectively half the lap is done when we get a first clear indication, and actually it doesn't really look like it. Hendrik Viol more than a second off the pace, which means there's not going to be an improvement on this lap, and it looks like the rain has picked up quite a bit again, which would explain why we don't see the improvements we would have maybe expected towards the end of the session. Herbert Geis just improved a little bit into P4 and is another personal best first sector. He was at the sharp end of the AM standings for a period, was dropped down after being in the pits, but he's now moving back up the order. I mean, looking at the track from Henry Acide's perspective, it's, and he goes really, really wide through that apex. I think it was intentional, but it looked like he was heading straight for the gravel for a moment.
I think you're right. I think it was. As we run the telemetry on the Henri Acide car, you can see it on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. You can see how tentative he is being on the throttle. That certainly wouldn't be the case if it was dry track conditions. Up to very nearly 200 kilometers per hour, make that 210, 220 before he has to brake again. So Felix Herziger from Yasin Ferrati, Michael Verhagen from Hendrik Viol. Just 25 seconds remaining. Anyone that starts a lap before the clock counts down to 0 can continue that lap, and the lap will still count.
Felix Herziger just actually improved on his personal best and provisional pole time by a few tenths, increasing his lap to 6.5 tenths. Henry Acide won't be able to make it across the line before the checkered flag comes out. Let's see if he takes the checkered flag or if he dives into the pit lane. It still looks like he's pushing.
I would agree with that. Certainly not going to make that turn into the pit lane. As he heads towards the timing line, Henri Acide, he doesn't improve, Nico.
No, he doesn't improve, and that means he's 4th in class, but P7 overall. Now, I mean, Vincenzo Scarpetta and Max Mugelli, our other remaining Pirelli drivers, are way down the order. Let's see, Scarpetta still has an option potentially to improve as we take a slow-mo look, and I mean, just the amount of water out there on the track is immense.
Here's Herbert Geis then. Herbert Geis is currently P4 in class. Marco Sanassi is, in my opinion, still out of position, Nico, and I don't think this is an improvement coming from Marco Sanassi. I think you're right. I think the rain has, the intensity has increased a bit, and that means it's a real struggle for our drivers out there. Credit to them for not binning it at all, you know, not one driver.
Well, no jinxing from the commentator.
No, sorry.
Here in the final stages, but I think the conditions indeed are really not too good to find any more improvement, and especially when you're in this queue and you have traffic and visibility compromised. I think that Marco Sanassi indeed has bailed this lap, or actually he's not quite sure. He will feel definitely out of position, and actually he's the one from the group that will still finish that lap, but I would be surprised if he found enough time to improve, and indeed it stays P6.
Yes.
Armin Arifpour just found a little bit of time, but he's way off the pace in P17. Martin Havas bringing up the rear, but yeah, the other side of the spectrum.
Michael Verhagen then, having done a good job. He's the best of the AM drivers, ahead of Hendrik Viol. Felix Herziger for our Pirelli drivers, ahead of Yasin Ferrati. So Trofeo Pirelli and Pirelli Am qualifying done and dusted then. We still have qualifying to come from our Copichel Am drivers. Here is Henri Acide, who was a good showing from Henri Acide, who's P4 in class, but that actually is P7 overall as he indicates right and comes into the pit lane. We will, of course, bring you the classification in full in moments from now. But we know our pole sitters are going to be Felix Herziger for our Pirelli drivers and Michael Verhagen for our Pirelli Am drivers. Here at the Automotodrome Brno, where weather conditions are not particularly nice, it has to be said, and predicted to stay like this for pretty much the whole day. Confirmation of Trofeo Pirelli first of all, then the results brought to you by Fire. Felix Herziger P1, Yasin Ferrati P2, Gilles Renmans P3 ahead of Henri Acide, Max Mugelli and Vincenzo Scarpetta. Stand by, here come the Am qualification results. Michael Verhagen P1 ahead of Hendrik Viol and David Gosner and Herbert Guys. Then it's James Owen, Marco Sanassi, Andrew Morrow, Nobuhiro Imada, and they were ahead of David Akabadze, Hanno Laskowski, Armin Arifpour, and Martin Havas. There we have qualifying for Trofeo Pirelli and Pirelli Am done, dusted, and completed. We do have more qualifying, though, to come from our Copichel Am drivers in due course. Please join us for that. Bye-bye for now. It was the weather girls that had the huge hit. It's raining men. Well, it's not raining men, but it is certainly raining here at the Automotodrome Brno. Welcome to Ferrari Challenge Round 4. We are live from the Czech Republic with our Copa Am drivers about to go out for their qualifying session to set the grid for their race 2 to come this afternoon. And here is our formal and official welcome to this 5.4 kilometer circuit situated around about 20 minutes from the city center of Brno, maybe 2.5 hours from Prague or so. From here, we head off to Valencia, then Barcelona, then Spa-Francorchamps and Mugello to conclude our 2025 calendar for Ferrari Challenge here in Europe. The revered one-make series finds its way around this 5.4 kilometer circuit, which features some 15 turns. Very, very challenging circuit for our drivers. 6 left, 9 right. And the undulating nature of it is one that appeals to the drivers and is described as a roller coaster of tarmac. 17 degrees, the track temperature. The air temperature is 14 degrees. That's what we've got at the moment. And as I alluded to, Nico, it's raining.
Yes, it is. And the rain will greet our competitors here in Copa Am. Who you can see in front of you: Paolo Scudieri, Boris Gideon, Andreas König, who took the race win yesterday after a brilliant battle throughout the entirety of the race with 186 car driver Jan Sandman. Jan Sandman put the pressure on Andreas König. Jan Sandman was on pole actually, but Andreas König went around the outside at the start, and then I mean, you couldn't separate the two by more than 7/10 throughout the entirety of the race.
It was a brilliant race from both of them, wasn't it?
Absolutely. There is Tommy Lindroth inside the car, still in the dry part, inside the box. That won't be much longer as the clock has started to tick down. There you can see the first cars making their ways out of the pit lane into the very, very wet challenge that the Brno circuit presents this morning.
There is the number 150 car of Alvaro Ramos that we saw momentarily. This is Shintaro Akatsu, who drives for the Ineco Reparto Corsa Ram team. Shintaro just holding fire before going out on track. There is yesterday's race winner, Andreas König. Emil Frey, racing driver. Emil Frey holding the 104 car in at the moment, not being released. So we have some 14 cars as Andreas is now released into the hot lane of the pit lane and drives right below our commentary studio here, situated above the pit garages. And he's on his way. Pino Frascaro will be on his way as well. So we'll see what our drivers can do over the next 30 minutes. We've seen from the previous qualifying sessions that visibility is compromised, grip is compromised, and it only takes a momentary lapse in terms of concentration and steering input, and you'll find yourself in the gravel. Thankfully, the Trafia Pirelli and Pirelli Am qualifying, which was on just a few moments ago, ran to time. The Shell qualifying before it, we saw a couple of offs, which just reinforced that the conditions are torrid for these drivers who are having to go out and do their best they can in very, very difficult conditions, Nico.
Absolutely, and especially now as we had effectively half an hour of no cars running, that means standing water will have accumulated again. So this is the first point of order for everybody, is to find themselves around the track, find themselves at home with the conditions, if that's even possible, and get rid of some of the standing water, especially the lower part of the circuit, where just naturally that accumulates even more. It's always going to be a wet track, and the painted lines and the curbs will always be territory that you'd rather avoid for sake of keeping control of the car, because that's where it's most treacherous. And and even the circuit that has been newly resurfaced just ahead of this event, and therefore represents a much quicker surface, but also something of an unknown in these conditions especially. The drivers will have their hands full on the grey stuff, let alone the painted lines.
Yes, you've described that perfectly. It'll be a few moments before we get any meaningful times. Paolo Scudieri will running the clock on right now. He's got traffic ahead of him. And inside the garage of Paolo Scudieri Samo car, you can see Stefano Guy, who is his driver coach and a successful racing driver himself in the Ferrari Challenge also. Stefano Guy has had an illustrious motor racing career and is an all-time good chap, and the relationship he has with Paolo Scudieri to deliver the very best he can. Paolo has seen some fantastic results in the 101 car. I have to say I'm perhaps surprised, Nico, that Paolo hasn't been on the podium yet this year. It's a question of when, not if, because Paolo is always there or thereabouts. Just hasn't come so far this season, but as I say, I'm sure it will.
Yeah, you definitely wouldn't bet against it. He is such an experienced and consistent driver, and arguably difficult conditions like this might favor someone with the experience level who has seen effectively all the conditions that a Ferrari Challenge combined with the elements can throw at you. Certainly not someone you would rule out in having a good qualifying result. We're 5 minutes into this session. That means we haven't had any meaningful times, but Paolo Scudieri is one of those who will give us an indicator of what's possible in the early stages of the session. Norikazu Shibata, the first one to put any time on the board. Sven Schirmer, our championship leader, finished P3 in a relatively boring race for him because he was fairly on his own, but collected valuable points in P3. He is the second one to set a time. Alois Meyer and Paolo Scudieri joining in that queue as well. Nana Toniella, great qualifying yesterday, great race as well, with the fifth driver to set a time. As we take a replay of the Paolo Scudieri car, and it's just the water spray in all 20 dimensions almost. It's every direction.
Yes, it makes visibility very, very difficult. Indeed, if you're anything other than the first car out. Norikazu Shibata and Sven Schirmer we're watching here. So Norikazu Shibata, the Formula Racing driver, with Sven Schirmer right behind. They are P1 and P2 as we speak, with a 2:22.839 and a 2:24.075. So tentatively finding their way around the circuit in these difficult conditions, accelerating more gently than ordinarily you would do, as Shintaro Akatsu splits them and goes second fastest with a 2:23.431. You get the impression that Sven Schirmer has just eased up, Nico, and the reason for that will be to go for it on the next lap with a tad more visibility available to him than he currently has, I suggest.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely good analysis, and obviously that's where the team again comes into the equation, that the drivers are not out there alone, but they have the advice from the team who will be able to tell the drivers, ease off, you will have more track space, and especially Sven Schirmer doesn't have only one driver coach, he actually got two of them.
Max Blancardi and Andrea Gagliardini, both hugely experienced and successful drivers as well, who wear their passion with pride, I can assure you.
Yeah, for sure. I had a nice conversation with them yesterday, telling us all about the dynamic between a driver and two driver coaches, which, you know, is not the norm. Usually you have one reference point, but Sven Schirmer has the input and the valuable advice from two very experienced race drivers.
Yeah. So it's Jan Sandman that has gone quickest, Nico, and we pick him up right now, the Kessel driver, who's delivered a 2:20.965. That's a full 2/10 quicker than Alice Meyer with a 2:21.160. Then it is Norikatsu Shibata, Paolo Scudiera, Germano Toniella, Shintaro Akatsu, Sven Schirmer, Andreas Koenig, Pino Frascaro, Alvaro Ramos, Guy Fave, and Tommy Lindroth. The only driver that hasn't really set a time yet is Alexei Komarov, who drives for the Scuderia Prague team. Therefore, it is a local race and team contingent engineering the 199 car as Jan Sandman continues on his way with a personal best through Sector 1. So quicker this time around than even last time around for Jan Sandman through Sector 1. 2:29.65 as we pick up now on Pino Frascaro, who's done personal best in Sector 1 and Sector 2, currently sits P10 in the order. This, though, will be an improvement theoretically for Pino Frascaro if he continues in the same vein, rounds the final turn and heads towards the timing beam, which he breaks, and he improves some 6 positions. So well done to Pino Frascaro, up to P4.
Yeah, and we see pretty much all the drivers showing personal best or overall bests, as Jan Sandman also just improved on his previous best time, only marginally, but still. Sven Schirmer on a very significant upward trajectory, provisional after 1 sector, almost 2 seconds to the good, and we pick him up, currently P10, and you can see he followed that up with another very good first, sector up with a second one of equal color, 2.7 seconds trajectory quicker as Shibata finishes his lap and moves up into P2, but I rather suspect Sven Schirmer will make P1 his own.
You can see the reactions of Andrea Gagliardini and Max Blancardi. There they are, the driver coaches to Sven Schirmer, Nico.
The Penske Sportwagen Hamburg driver putting it on to P1. He has been Mr. Consistent and very successful this season and has a fairly sizable lead in the championship. I mean, we will be crowning the half-time champion at the end of today.
That's a really interesting concept, isn't it? Halfway champion, halfway, who's leading the points halfway through the season. What we do know in the Ferrari challenges, it matters not.
Absolutely no. There are no silverware, no trophies handed out for being at the top halfway through the season, but it's a good indicator. It's a moment to reflect on the first part of the season, and you know, the other part of that is whatever misfortune may have befallen you in the first half of the season, and we have a few drivers who haven't performed to their pace and their expectation. It can all change, and usually it does in the Ferrari challenge. So whatever deficit you may have accumulated in the overall standings, there is equal amount of races remaining for the rest of the season to make up that set ground.
This is Charlie Hollings as we split the picture. Charlie Hollings is driver coach to Jan Sandman, who's just seen him drop down to P3 because it's Sven Schirmer, as we well know, P1. Then it is Shintaro Akatsu, Nico, who has just put a time in which is good enough for P2. Now it's Jan Sandman who has responded. He's not responded quite to the time of Sven Schirmer, but he has improved. It's a 2:19.399 from Jan Sandman. And super slow-mo in replay of the Jan Sandman car. Sven Schirmer, though, with an awesome lap, 2:17.553. Very good lap indeed. So it's Schirmer, Sandman, Akatsu, Shibata, Meyer, Scudieri, Frascaro, Lindroth, Ramos, Toniella, Fave, Koenig, and Komarov.
Well, Andreas Koenig is the driver that
he's got to improve, hasn't he?
Sticks out. I mean, he is 7.5 seconds, not tenths, but seconds off the pace of Sven Schirmer thus far, with 17 minutes remaining. So we expect him to move up the order quite significantly. And there is still 17.5 minutes remaining. However, we have seen that, you know, one driver losing it in the gravel, bringing out a red flag, means that a lot of those minutes tick off effectively unusable, because you have to come into the pit lane, you have to have an out lap again, reinstall, and only then can you go about setting a quick time. And we saw in Coppershell earlier, 2 red flags in quick succession meant that effectively the final 6 minutes or so went away without anybody setting a time. So, you know, the earlier you can do it, the better. Andreas König, first sector, certainly an improvement, not to the standards that he would expect. So more to come from him. Pino Frascaro, good showing in P7, also trying to improve, although this lap doesn't look like it's going to bring one immediately.
I think that's fair. So the order remains Sherma, Sandman, Akatsu, Shibata. And we're at about half distance, as near as makes no difference in this qualifying session for our Ferrari Challenge Coppershell AM drivers. And interestingly, when you pick up on our broadcast director, when he goes to certain cameras, you can actually hear the rain falling onto the microphone of the camera. Such is the rainfall, which has remained as consistent as our driver's ability to keep it on the tarmac at the moment. Well done to them all, because very, very difficult conditions. Guy Favet has come into the pit lane, and it's around about now, Nico, that if they haven't done so, we'll see drivers perhaps putting a new set of wet weather tyres on to have another go in the second half of qualifying. It's been a very good qualifying from Shintaro Akatsu, driver of the 115 car, who has been on the podium this season. He took a P3 in the opening race at Monza, you may recall. He has been podium-less since then, but I feel sure that Shintaro Akatsu will be back on the podium again very soon, if not the race winner at some stage. Manuela Gosner, you can see on the pit wall there, just taking a look at what everyone was doing out there. She, of course, is teammate to Germana Toniella. Oh, as a round has gone. The 168 car of Germana Toniella, the very driver I was talking about, who Manuela Gosner is a teammate to in the Ineco Reparto Corsa Ram team. That car pirouetted against the barriers. That means the red flag is brought out. Let's see in replay here, Nico. Just the car snapping away.
Yeah.
Now, in fairness,
Barrier doing what it's supposed to do.
Barrier did do what it was supposed to do. You're right.
But we're exactly 15 minutes. I mean, not that you would ever want to time that or ever want to do that, but it's exactly halfway through the session that we have a red flag. And I mean, certainly race control and the operators of the track will have a look whether that barrier needs any further investigation or looking at to be safe. Nana gets the car moving again on her own power. With unfortunately some of the bodywork hanging off, but that means she can bring it back into the pit lane and could potentially take part in the remainder of the session. There is Sven Schirmer, who reigns supreme for the time being.
He was in the pit lane having a new set of wets put on as that occurred. So he actually has perhaps lost the least, if I may say that, because he was already in the pit lane, Nico. I don't think it's going to be a long stoppage, because I think that the barrier absorbed the impact, and to my, having seen it in replay twice, I don't think it bent the barrier. I think the integrity, therefore, of the safety structure remains, and therefore we'll be able to get going again very quickly, I feel sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but we will see. Race control will be working, will be in contact with the relevant people of the circuit and around the track. We see everybody having come in. As soon as we get an indication of a restart timing, we will bring it to you. There is the Germana Toniella car in the pit lane. Obviously the team looking at it, but what I say,
superficial. Some of the damage, as Manuela Gosner looks on as well, and here is Andreas König.
And he's got his work cut out for him for the remainder of the session.
You're right. As the session was stopped, he, as you can see from the left-hand side of the screen, P12, not where we would expect to see yesterday's race winner. Second race win of the year for him, having taken a second race win in race 2 of the Misano weekend, Andreas König. So red flag, no indication yet from race control as to when the session will resume. As I say, I don't think it's going to be a long stoppage as we take a look at the Penske Sportwagen Hamburg driver, Sven Schirmer, who by a big margin, Nico, of 1.846 seconds leads in qualifying so far.
Yeah, I mean, he did put in a blisteringly quick lap, and nobody was really able to respond since. So the disadvantage for everybody is effectively now, as long as we've got a red flag, the rain is falling and no cars are running across it to get rid of some of it. So the first few minutes after the restart of the session will effectively just be used to get rid of some of the water, and the longer the intermission is, the more water will be on the track. And just before we bring you a few nice scenes, we will be going back qualifying in a minute and a half.
So as we anticipated, it wasn't a long stoppage, and the cars get ready to get back out on track for the second half of qualifying for our Ferrari Challenge Copa Shell AM drivers. We are at round 2 of the race 2 day of the Brno weekend. You can see Germano Toniella out of the car, perfectly okay. I suspect that probably and potentially the team will look at the car and see if immediately we've got another car off into the gravel, and immediately with the accelerator pushed down, that means it's beached, and we will go from one red flag almost immediately to another, Nico, I would suggest. And that is Alwas, who's beached it, and you could see the moment you put the accelerator down on the gravel, it just digs the car in, which means that, as I say, we get an immediate red flag because another car is going to have to be recovered. And the point you were making just before the stoppage, Nico, is that the track conditions have changed. You know, there is standing water now, which wasn't there potentially when the cars were running. So, yeah, it's a it's so easy for that to happen. And, you know, credit to everyone that is able to keep it on the tarmac, but by Jiminy, that's a difficult job to do. So, unfortunately, we're back to a red flag situation, and another car has got to be recovered before we can go back to qualifying again. I don't think it will be a particularly long stoppage. The recovery teams here at the Brno circuit have worked very quickly and very efficiently, so as soon as we can get the stricken one out of the 180 car out of the gravel, and that was Germano Toniella, whose excursion into the barriers brought out the first red flag. But when we returned to the session, unfortunately, Alwas Meer found the standing water, and that pirouetted the car into the gravel trap. And the gravel trap did what it's designed to do, and that is to hold the car safely. And it's going to have to be pulled out of there before we can go back to qualifying. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, obviously that means there is going to be even more water later on, which is going to be bad news for the likes, especially for Andreas Koenig, who desperately needs to move up the order. If there is one positive for him, is that he was not one of those who had come out and had to do a whole lap effectively under red flag conditions. But equally, he knows that the time is ticking, even though obviously the clock is not currently ticking, but he will feel the pressure, I'm sure, after having such a magnificent race yesterday, withstanding the pressure and taking the race win. He will feel like he wants to replicate that, of course, but to do so, and any chance, he will have to have a good qualifying. And he, as you can see at the very, very back of the shot, there he is for the Emil Ferrari Racing team. And right at the very front of the queue is Jan Sandman, the driver he was battling with yesterday.
Yes.
And had a magnificent battle with. And Jan Sandman currently in P2 in a much better position in qualifying. The only one battered is the car effectively in the center, the blue and yellow one of Sven Schirmer.
I suppose if we take any lessons from this, Nico, it is that sometimes it pays to go out early and bank a lap, and at least get a lap on the board. Right, while we await the recovery of the Alwas Mare car, here's some more images from qualifying that we've had so far.
And here we are, still no indication on when we will restart. There is the Alois Meyer car, who we can see is on his way back into the pit lane, and that means I'm sure, will not be far away from restarting. Effectively, once he's entered the pit lane, everybody else is free to go out. Well, race control saying the session is back underway, so it's 11:05. Local time, maybe 11:08 or something like that. Could be a time for the restart if we want to be prophets, which generally we try to avoid.
It's becoming worse again. Just hear that with regards to the rainfall that is coming down. There is our current P1 driver, Sven Schirmer. He, as the conditions are changing, is coming down harder again now. We'll be glad that he's banked what he has banked. There, back to the Tommy Lindroth car. Good to see Tommy back racing again. Driving for the Baron team. Sven Schirmer, Jan Salmon, Shintaro Katsu, Norikatsu Shibata, the top four. Here's Guy Favet, or Guy 4. Drives for the team based in Scuderia FMA. Still no word from race control because we await the car of Alwas to make its way back to the pit lane. You can see that Jan Salmon is champing at the bit to get out there. He's the first driver in the queue of cars. As soon as we get confirmation from race control as to when this will resume, Nico projected maybe 11:08, and I still think that's a real possibility. Although, as every second ticks down, it means we get closer to that threshold. We've got about 30 seconds before we reach 11:08, so it might be 11:09 or 11:10. Oh. It's going to be 11:10. It's going to be 11:10, I can tell you.
Well, My bingo card is not full yet, so we'll keep it at that. Yeah, Alois Meyer now in the pit lane, as we can see, having just filed into the back of the pit lane. That means we're effectively ready to go in but a few moments or 2 minutes time, actually.
I'd like to think that it's just that the marshals around the track, and do you know what, a huge shout out to all the volunteers, Nico, the marshals that enable us to enjoy the sport that we love so much, because without them in absolutely hideous weather conditions out there getting soaked, I was going to say that the reason for the additional time before we go back to qualifying might be because they're out with their brooms clearing away gravel wherever possible. So fair play to volunteers that provide the marshalling services at motor racing circuits around the world. Without your steadfast service, ladies and gentlemen, we would not be able to enjoy our sport, so we thank you.
Absolutely well said, and we should never lose sight of that, how much time and effort and love goes into the sport and allows our protagonists to do what they love to do, and bringing us that great entertainment that they do. Lots of resiliency needed on a morning like this, and the same pretty much goes for our TV production crew, and especially those who are not in an OB van or us like in a dry commentary studio, but operating the cameras in these elements. Shout out to them, whether it's rainy like today or 40 degrees in the shade. They support us and bring you these wonderful images of these wonderful cars. And with that, we're only about 15 seconds away from the session resuming.
I still think we have the hardest job. I'm saying that, and our audio engineer, Marco, who works so hard for us, sits there and he's just nodding his head thinking, why do I have to work with these guys?
Well, we are back to green flag conditions. 14 minutes, 15 seconds remaining on the clock, and I rather expect that Andreas Koenig there at the very end of that shot will be going fairly soon, has to allow Alois Meyer through, but I think he's not going to be stationary there for very long. He's not at the front of the queue, in fairness.
It surprises me, to be honest with you. But perhaps he's just going to let everyone go out and dissipate a bit of water, Nico, and almost act as water plows before he makes his way onto the tarmac.
Yeah, I mean, but that's still banking that we don't have another two red flags. So sometimes it's a gamble you have to take, and sometimes, yeah, well, the gamble pays off, and sometimes you're on the short end of whatever trade. And one thing is certain, it's going to be wet and it's going to be treacherous, and you can see the gravel here on the track. And not that you needed any less grip in these conditions. The gravel certainly helps to minimize it. And it's like skating on ice almost.
The poetry that Nico is able to bring us in his sterling service to our broadcast this morning is to be admired. Roses are red, violets are blue. Some poems rhyme, this one doesn't. As we continue, descended into a maelstrom of as the cars now will dissipate some of that water, and we get into the remaining 12.5 minutes of qualifying session for our Ferrari Challenge Copa Shell-Am cars. Jan Sandman, Pino Frascaro, the two cars that you can see center screen right now. Jan Sandman is currently second fastest, and Pino Frascaro is seventh fastest. P2 and P7 for those two drivers at the moment. They've broken away from the rest of the pack, being led by Alvaro Ramos, I believe. And Andreas Koenig, Nico, is still in the pit lane.
Yeah, it surprises me. And, well, I mean, the Ferrari racing team is so experienced. They race and across so many categories with Ferrari, including the DTM this weekend at Zandvoort, where the weather conditions are equally difficult, certainly across the weekend. So they know they will have the strategy down.
Look, Pino has really dialed out now, and that's to give himself a bit of space.
So we will see. I'm sure the Ferrari racing team will have a plan about this. There is the Andreas Koenig car.
Wipers are going, engine's running, he's ready to go.
Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't look like there was any issue with the car, otherwise they would be working on it. I think it's really just being biding the time.
There's a very grumpy looking Max Blancardi.
And he's not even out there in the elements.
He is one of the pairing of driver coaches that looks after Sven Schirmer. This is Jan Salmon. Whoa, getting a wiggle on then the back end, just letting go. I mean, it is absolutely treacherous in terms of weather conditions for our drivers. We've got just under 11 minutes remaining. Sven Schirmer, another driver like Andreas Koenig, who has not made his way out of the pit lane yet. So Jan Sandman trying to make a bit of hay while the sun does not shine for Kessel Racing. And we will see what he is able to do. We're running the clock on him, and Sector 1 time is about to be concluded, and it's a second and a half down on the Sven Schirmer time, so it'll be the next lap. I suspect that Jan Sandman will try and improve still further, although the conditions from when Sven Schirmer set that 2:17.553 have altered. Nico made the point that as long as cars are not running out there on track, it means more water is being put down and remaining on the track. We've got a localized yellow flag at turn 5. I hope it's just someone that's had a momentary off. I fear it's greater than that because we have a red flag again.
And just under 10 minutes remaining. I'm sure we'll get a replay and an analysis of the situation. Which car is it? And
it's Alexei Komarov.
It's the Alexei Komarov car. And well, I think we have a good understanding of how that might have come about, just by virtue of the conditions out there.
Yeah.
I'm sure we will get a replay of that and right on cue. And I mean, it is in the braking zone, but it's effectively still on the straight.
Yeah.
And that just proves the point of how difficult and how treacherous that is.
And it wasn't the only one, Nico.
No, there is...
That's Paolo Scudieri, who does a perfect 360 and keeps the power on, and that is art. I'm sorry, I know Stefano Guy is actually smiling because that was a brilliant save from Paolo Scudieri, and it was, a perfect pirouette and donut, wasn't it?
Yeah, and there he comes and gets his grades A and B for technical difficulty and style. And yeah, there you can see Jan Samman once again, front of the queue. Sven Schirmer once again stationary. Andreas Koenig still stationary.
Yeah, and you'd actually, if you think about it, both Sven Schirmer and Andreas Koenig, they can have a wry smile to themselves, can't they? Because they've not they've not compromised anything, have they? Because no one has been able to set a further lap because we've had the red flag come out again, and that for the stricken Alexei Komarov car.
True. Although arguably the smile from Sven Schirmer in P1 will be significantly wider than that of Andreas Koenig in P12.
Yes,
but yeah, of course. I mean, that's always the part of this. These conditions is. You can try and set a quick lap, but you have to rely on everybody else keeping it on the gray stuff, which becomes more and more difficult the more time passes away. So, less than 10 minutes remaining, but how many of those minutes will be efficiently or effectively forming an opportunity to improve is anybody's guess at this stage. Sven Schirmer, on his own, well, you know, if there is nobody improving, he will have pole position, so you could live with that.
Yeah. And it's, I think with 10 minutes remaining, when we get back going again, it's going to be a tall order for improvement because, again, the rain is, I don't think it's intensified now, but it's still coming down fairly consistently. That means the conditions are remain as damp as they ever were, and I just think it might be a struggle to get a tyre up to temperature and improve on that time that Sven Schirmer set, which means it's a very tall order for somebody like Andreas Koenig.
For sure. For sure. Well, for the time being, Tommy Lindroth greeting us in his very unique style, which in Swedish I think that means
hello.
Hello. Liquid sunshine.
Tommy, don't ever change. He might not be the tallest guy in the paddock, but when it comes to character, he's one of the biggest.
Yeah, he certainly stands out. The Alvaro Ramos car and the driver inside.
Alvaro, I altogether a tad more polite than Tommy was.
Yes, arguably. There's a pigeon.
Lieutenant Pigeon, who of course had a big hit song. Oh, we're doing the music again then. Kid Creole and the Coconuts with Stool Pigeon, if I remember correctly, and it was Lieutenant Pigeon with Mouldy Old Toe, which I suspect, if I translate that into German, would become Mouldy Old Broad. I don't know. Stop it, Dave.
Steady on. Steady on.
Right. Our director is saying, right, stop talk now. I'm going to play some music.
Well, enjoy. Welcome to the Czech swimming competitions featuring the Ferrari Challenge 296. No, not quite. But we're still 10 minutes away from the end of this qualifying session, potentially, at least in terms of net clock time. How long that will actually take is anybody's guess, because we're still under red flag conditions with no indication of a restart.
No, but to be fair, I think the recovery teams have worked so hard and so quickly here at the Brno circuit. I don't think it'll be long before we're going back to qualifying.
Gives our camera guys a
rest.
Brief break, the ability to check the latest live scores from sports around the world or stock exchange data. I don't know. Whatever that person was checking.
You were going off at a tangent that was even greater than I imagined. Right, we're going to get the session to restart in exactly 1 minute from now. There you go. The session will restart at 11:22. We have 11:21 local time, and Tommy Lindroth will be ready to go. It's Ines Rule, team boss of Baron Motorsport there, sheltering under the brolly. Tommy Lindroth sheltering in the car. He lights up the power plant of the 296 Challenge car, all 3 litres twin-turbo V6, affording an extraordinary noise, sound. It's orchestral-like, I have to say. And that's an interesting use of a tailgate, I have to say. Let it become a roof. Why not, indeed? And to protect yourself from the elements which remain showery, it has to be said. And therefore the track conditions are certainly not going to improve for the 10 minutes that remain in this qualifying session. The session that is led by the Penske Sportwagen Hamburg driver Sven Schirmer, being chased by Jan Sandman, who's first in the queue. Behind Pino is Pino Frescaro. In fact, it's the same P1 and P2 as last time around when they restarted this session. We saw a superb ballerina-like move from Paolo Scudieri just before the session was stopped when he did a full 360. Let's get back to it then. 9.5 minutes remaining, which actually means not so many competitive is not the right word, but not so many real deal laps for the drivers to be able to who will put a time on the board. Right, with a spirit of foreboding and fingers crossed, let's go back to qualifying. Jan Sandman. Here comes Paolo Scudieri, driving the 101 car. Coming out, we have Jan Sandman, we have Paolo Scudieri, Pino Frescaro, Tommy Lindroth, Alvaro Ramos, the car that we can see. Very similar livery as this one, which is Guy Favet. Driver that hasn't made it out of the pit lane yet is Andreas Koenig, curiously. And he, at the moment, he's P12 in qualifying, which is, that would be a 6th row start. As well done, Guy, managing to keep it out of the gravel. I did wonder, as I saw a little bit of understeer there, whether he was heading to that gravel trap, but thankfully he managed to keep it out. So, 8 minutes remain.
Sven Schirmer, our provisional pole setter, also staying in. From his point of view, I can understand that he will probably feel like the risk in terms of binning the car and doing damage is possibly too great, and he will just feel that whatever happens out there, he doesn't need to be part of that. He's satisfied, and it first has to be proven that this track even affords a competitive lap time with all the standing water. And the traffic that will be out there, that is far from a given. And Jan Sandman is completing his outlap, and that means 7.5 minutes remaining. I dare to say, should we have a red flag with less than 4 minutes or so remaining, I'm not sure that we would even get a restart of the session. So it's effectively just see over the next 2 or 3 minutes what you can do and hope that nobody else runs afoul of where the car is supposed to be located, namely on the track.
I think I would probably agree with you.
Probably.
So Jan Sandman then has, I have to say, the rain now has intensified a bit more, Nico.
Yeah, but Sven Schirmer, contrary to my expectation, he has decided that actually, well, you know, I may take part in that. So he has come out, so he's taking part. That means Akatsu and Shibata in P3 and P4, they are still in the pit lane. So is Germano Toniella and Andreas Koenig. Jan Sandman towards the end of Sector 1, and we will get a first indication of how quick he can be, or anybody potentially can be around this track. Jan Sandman having shown his pace and his familiarity with the circuit. Well, it is a personal best right out of the box, so you would argue that there is still potential in the circuit.
Possibly so. Possibly so, Nico. So the Kessel driver, Jan Sandman, that we're watching right now, as Nico has said, he was Sector 1 a personal best. He was still 9/10 down on the Sven Schirmer time. I remind you that Sven Schirmer is 1.8 seconds quicker than anybody else when he set the lap, which is 2:17.553. And Andreas Koenig, I can tell you, has just left the pit lane because he's driven directly beneath our studio. There is Charlie Hollings. He sat there with the headphones on. He is driver coach to Jan Sandman, who's brought the gap down a little bit. It's still a personal best for Jan Sandman, but he's still not going to be on terms with Sven Schirmer. And I actually wonder, Nico, whether anybody will be able to, because the conditions of the track have changed significantly since that lap was set.
Yes, fair, but you can see Jan Sandman final sector best overall.
Yeah.
2 personal bests on top. So considering this was the first quick lap that was set after the intermission.
Look at the car slide in replay, Nico.
I'm positively surprised by the time that Jan Sandman was able to set, which is nothing to do with his talent, or actually confirms his talent, that after this long stoppage of activity, he immediately came out and had improvements on all 3 sectors, including a overall best. So I think the potential of the track is definitely there, and that's encouraging, and I think it will mean that we will have improvements from multiple drivers as long as we have green flag conditions. So Jan Sandman in that first sector still running downhill, that right-hander into the twisty part of the circuit here. double right-hander, and then it's a double left-hander after that. Here's the first of those. Approaching the first timing line about 5 or 6 seconds from now. That will give us an indication of whether he will be able to challenge for pole. And well, we're only talking a tenth and a half.
Yep. Fair play, Jan. He is pushing, and pushing hard. It's Sven Schirmer, Jan Salmon, Pino Frascaro now, third fastest, Nico. The one that I'm really interested in is going to be the driver of the 104 car. That's Andreas Koenig, who really has left it late. Not all of it by his design, to be fair. But, you know, what have we got left on the clock? 3.5 minutes. He's going to get 2 laps in at best, I would say, at race pace. Seems a bit over-glamorous because it's not at race pace in these conditions, but it will be at race pace in terms of if the conditions remain the same.
Absolutely. He just finished the second sector, and Jan Salmon, the focus currently on him as he has changed the trajectory and is now on an improvement trajectory overall. So will it be a provisional pole from Jan Salmon? Sideways moment, that was not the quickest, but I'm not sure if it lost too much time, and indeed he goes to P1.
Andrea Gagliardini, who is driver coach, of course, to Sven Schirmer. Charlie Hollings altogether a little bit more reserved in his appreciation of what Jan Salmon was able to do. Here's Andreas Koenig, who will be setting himself up, I suspect. And he needs to deliver, and deliver straight out of the box, Nico, because we've only got 2.5 minutes of this qualifying session remaining. Jan Salmon is our new provisional pole sitter. As a round has gone, Pino Frascaro. Thankfully, he keeps it out of the gravel. Good save, Pino.
And Andreas Koenig will send a special thanks to that, because he needs that lap and that session to stay green flagged. And it's a personal best, 1.8 seconds off. I mean, for him, it's about damage control, you would argue, at this stage. He will have one more lap after this one if it runs, which is not a given. Andreas Koenig, I mean, he withstood the pressure yesterday during the race. It's a totally different kind of pressure that he's under now. Not by Jan Salmon in his rear-view mirror and his rear-view screen. It's about the time and the conditions and the fact that he wants to start the race as high up the order as he possibly can. And, you know, just putting any meaningful lap time on the board on this attempt would be meaningful for him. And then the ability to go again and try and move even higher, 2.7 seconds, that's way off his usual standard, but it could mean maybe a row 3 or row 4 provisional position.
Which would be better than where he is currently, Nico.
Absolutely. 1 minute remaining on the clock, 1 turn to do for Andreas Koenig. Multiple purple lap times or sector times on our timing screen, so the potential is still there. And P12 becomes P6.
So a third row start for Koenig at the moment. Here comes Shintaro Akatsu, also improving with a personal best through Sector 1. He's currently P4. So the order is Jan Salmon, Sven Schirmer, Pino Frascaro, Shintaro Akatsu. Sven Schirmer has gone purple in Sector 1. So he is responding. So Sven Schirmer responding to Andreas Koenig and Jan Salmon in particular. And we've got a yellow flag at turn 2. Now
it's red flagged, and that means
that is it. Session is done.
Oh.
So Sven Schirmer is denied a potential pole. I don't think he was going to do it because his Sector 2 time was not where it needed to be.
No,
but it was close. It was jolly close. Who is it that's off?
We're not quite sure who that is. Well, we'll see. Is it Andreas Koenig himself? Yeah, it is Andreas Koenig himself. And
oh, let's see what happens. I mean, oh, and that's quite a contact with the barriers. And there is the Emil Frey team. Well, The most important thing is Andreas is perfectly okay. Walked away from the car because the integral safety of these 296 Challenge cars is brilliant. But that does mean that he's not going to be able to improve on his P6 time, which is a third row start. He was obviously going to try and do that. It's Jan Salmon, and there is his driver coach, Charlie Hollings. Well done, Charlie. He is such a calm, cool individual, is Charlie, and a fine racing driver himself. You can just see in the background, Nico, Ronnie Kessel, a team principal, of course, of Kessel Racing. Here is a very, very angry Sven Schirmer, who obviously felt he was on an improvement trajectory and was denied the opportunity to do it. But that's kind of what happens, and it was always going to be difficult, Nico, because of changing conditions and drivers finding it so tricky out there.
For sure. I mean, that is just... It's almost a guarantee that someone will try that little bit too hard, and you can't blame anybody for trying. And I mean, Andreas Koenig, he will... I think I don't want to overinterpret body language, someone walking away from the car. Andreas looked determined in his leaving the car there, and knowing him, he's the first to hold himself accountable for anything that goes wrong. I'm sure we will speak to him over lunch about his experience in this qualifying session, but well, that was a very, very difficult qualifying for all our competitors across all sessions, and I dare say the Shell Am drivers had it the toughest.
We have not yet had absolute confirmation that the session will not resume. I'm sure it won't. And there's Sven Schirmer having a conversation with Max Blancardi and Andrea Gagliardini. I suspect, Nico, you know, it's so, I mean, emotions run high, don't they? And he'll be disappointed that he was not able to improve upon his time. I mean, here is confirmation of the classification. He will be going from the front row, will be Sven Schirmer, P2, but Jan Salmon has put it on pole position. Then it's Pino Frascaro, P3, Shintaro Akatsu, Norakatsu Shibata, Andreas Koenig, Guy Favre, Alvas Meer, ahead of Paolo Scudieri, Tommy Lindroth, Alvaro Ramos, Germano Toniella, and Alexei Komarov. Well, we've had a drama-laden qualifying sessions from Ferrari Challenge. Please join us for the races this afternoon. I feel much the same is in prospect. From Nico and myself, bye-bye for now.